Hey, and welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to be looking at revisions in Revit. So before we get into it, if you happen to learn something or maybe you just like the video, demolish that like button. It really helps me out a lot. Okay, getting into it now, we want to look at revisions. We can find revisions in the View tab in Revit and over here under Sheet Composition, there's revisions. There's quite a lot to revisions, and while it's not like the most complicated thing ever, it's really important that you understand what they are, what they're used for, how to use them, when you might use them, and some different settings that might go along with that. So, with that, I will have probably a number of videos that go into uh, the specifics of revisions, maybe different settings that you could make, maybe personalizing them or something. But in this first video, I definitely want to show you, basically give you an overview of what revisions are and how you can use them and just what to expect when you have to deal with revisions. Because believe me, if you are in architecture and you're using Revit, you're probably going to have to use revisions because you're issuing sheets and issuing documents, and that's kind of where revisions come into play. So revisions are a great way for tracking changes in a sheet or a project throughout throughout the project itself, but throughout any change that might need to occur during the construction project. That's very important when it comes to tracking your progress because you want to have a way to do that, and revisions is the way to do that within Revit. Typically, you don't use revisions all the time, regardless of what you're doing in Revit. They tend to pop up and really show their benefit whenever you end up issuing sheets and you need to start tracking changes, because every change that goes into something that's changing within your project is associated to a cost or something that needs to be tracked from a construction standpoint. And so from there, that's where revisions are used, and that's why. So let's get into it and see how we can start to use them. So I've got 3 plans here. I've got a site plan, a floor plan, and an enlarged plan. And we're going to start adding some different revisions to things within each one of these views. So I've got a site plan here. I will drag this in. I'm going to change the scale. So of course it fits. Make that a 16th. That looks good. Drag this over here. Cool. I don't necessarily care about the look of these views and what's in them, the content, none of that, because I'm just going to add revision clouds. And that's kind of the next thing we're going to cover. But let me add these other 2 views. I'll have my floor plan here. Here's my level 1. Add this right there. And then finally, my enlarged plan, or really any one of these enlarged plans will be fine. But here's an enlarged plan for a restroom, and then another one for a separate set of restrooms. And let's go ahead and change the scale of this again so it will fit on the sheet. Perfect, that looks good. Okay, so we have all of these sheets set up, and let's first, start looking at the revisions. Revisions here. Whenever you first click on this, you see sheet issues / revisions. This is where all the magic is going to start to happen. And by default, you'll always have one revision. You can't delete this one. As you can see, I have the delete button. It's grayed out. I can't do it. You're always going to have one revision, because the idea is, you always have a lingering change that is on the horizon, and you want to be able to work with that. It's not like you just have 0 changes. Well, you might think that. Anyways, we have one, and that's fine. And there's a number of things that we can add to this particular revision before we even start to add revision clouds or like show changes. And that is a revision number. And by default, we can't change that at all. But where can we change that? If we move down here to the bottom right of this window, we can see numbering options. And there's numeric and then alphanumeric. And if you're familiar with English, you could understand that numeric is just simply numbers. And maybe for some reason, it's a different type of a project. Maybe it's the second phase of a project. Maybe you're picking up somewhere in the middle of revisions. I don't know. But you have the ability to not start at 1. Of course, I could just decide to start at 15. If I want to start number at 15, the revision number will start at 15. And that's really great. Very simple. And then we're familiar with these. We know what a prefix and a suffix is. So we can add any sort of information that we want to at the beginning or the end of this particular revision number. Now, this might pertain to if you're trying to track multiple phases, or I don't know. I only say that as an example because I haven't used these at all, prefixes and suffixes in my revision numbers, just because even with the complex projects I've worked on, multiple phases, multiple things going at one time, I've not needed to use prefix and suffix. There's probably better ways to deal with naming or tracking different revisions, and we will get into some of those different options. But again, it's up to you. You know what it does. It's a prefix, suffix. It adds something to the beginning. Maybe you want to add an A. We can press OK. We can see there's A1. I don't know. Never needed to do it. Don't really recommend it, but maybe there's a reason you might want to. And then finally, numbering. We could see, well, we're literally choosing between numeric, alphanumeric, or none. If we look at alphanumeric, it's literally the alphabet. If you're familiar with English, that is the alphabet. And again, we see the same prefix and suffix options here at the bottom. You can come in here and choose, maybe the second revision would be B, maybe I want that to be B2. It will then go from A to B2 to C, D. Again, not sure why you'd want to do that, but all of that is here, and you can freely switch between these two and determine which one of these will follow that particular scheme. So maybe you have one set of revisions that are simply numeric and another one that are alphanumeric. That might be another option. Never done that either. Everything I've always done has been numeric. Then we've got a date, just the date itself. Here is the actual date of filming. And so we want to at least have a date. That's fine. And then a description, revision 1. That's fine for now. But later on in this video, we'll get into changing this and, really reasons why. And then finally, issued. This is very important because as we start to issue sheets, again, you would then check this box and this revision would then be issued along with the sheet. So the idea being is if you end up issuing sheets, cool, and then a change occurs. You need to make that change. That's where revisions come into play. So we use this first revision, and from there, we highlight that change on the sheet. We issue the sheet, and at that point, we want to make sure that this revision is issued because it went out. It's gone. We have issued the sheet with that revision, and that it's issued. And so there's more to it than just, I checked a box. And you can see immediately what happens, at least from this window. All of these options are now grayed out. I can't do anything with this. And that's because it is issued. If I uncheck this and check it again, we could see the difference between checked and versus unchecked, issues versus unissued. And that's great because the idea, again, is that a sheet is issued with a revision. You don't want that to be deleted. You don't want that to go away. Like it's literally official at that point. And that's kind of the point. And that's really the beauty of revisions. And if we go to issue 2, this is, if you decide maybe you're working with different contractors, maybe it's, I don't know. These two are things I have not used. I've never really needed to. Issued by, again, if maybe you have in-house engineers and you have an in-house architecture for all of it's under one roof. Maybe that's an issued by, maybe this particular revision is issued by the engineer and the other one is the architect. I don't know. I've not needed to use the issued to or issued by, but they are there for you to use. They are just text fields. So if you want to, great. If not, not a big deal because I've never used it, never had to, and it's not a huge deal. And finally, show. Show has everything to do with what we're seeing when it comes to the revision on all of our views and our sheets. What are we seeing? Well, by default, and of course we are seeing right now, cloud and tag. So this cloud and tag is the revision cloud and the tag associated to that revision cloud, which is associated to that particular revision. And we'll see all that in just a minute. But with the different options we have here are cloud and tag. So we can see the cloud and the tag. We could see the tag, and then we could see none. So what are the different applications where you might use cloud and tag, or none? So if I want to do cloud and tag, of course, we're going to see the revision cloud and the tag, and that's kind of the default, and that's what I'd recommend. But the reason why you might want to use tag only is maybe you have issued, 2, 3, 4, any number of revisions greater than 1, and you want to make sure that those items are still documented and shown as officially issued on the sheet. We will, in just a second again, we will look at this revision schedule that will populate and show this on the sheet. But on top of that, you want to see what exactly was associated to a particular view as far as the change in that project. And we can see that through the revision clouds. That's kind of the point. We see that like, hey, you're highlighting this area, you want to look at this area, and then you tag it and it's associated to a revision. Cool. But the reason we'd want to only show the tag is if we have a more relevant or more recent or the most recent revision. And so what I end up doing is once I end up having a lot more revisions here, I'm only going to show the cloud for the most recent, because of course that's the most recent. And maybe a lot of times I end up making change to one element in a project and I end up changing it again or something very close to it. So like if I were to show every cloud, it would get insane. You couldn't actually see the content below the cloud. So it just, all we're seeing here is the tag. And so the tag is saying, hey, there was a revision at this location, and that tag is still associated to the revision schedule, which we'll take a look at in just a second. And so if you need to, you can go back to a previous revision, a previous issued sheet, and see that cloud on the sheet with that older revision. Okay, great. We've looked at all of this. I'm going to remove all of these except, of course, the one. It will tell me, yes, you're deleting this. Okay. And if I wanted to do, the only time I've done show none is if I want to, for some reason, print a sheet without revisions. Maybe it's just as a reference or this or that. Now, be aware that if I choose none, that doesn't mean that the revisions in the revision schedule are going to go away, because they still exist. We're just not seeing them. So that's where things get a little hairy. If you want to actually remove the revisions off the sheet and the schedule on the sheet, you have to physically delete the revisions. And I wouldn't recommend doing that unless you're in a model that you've exported, or just, I don't know, something like that. So that's not something you're going to be doing all the time. And if you're just doing normal revisions, you probably won't ever show none, because you want to be able to see and reference what was previously done. Okay, that was long-winded. We've talked about all the sheet issues and revisions, everything in this window that we care about except the numbering. And I'm specifically going to save this for another video because it's very important, and there are a lot of different opinions on whether you track revisions per project or per sheet. It changes things. I'm not going to say significantly, because it's not that significant as to what you see, but the potential impact on how your project will function is very different and can be significant. So I'm going to save that for another video. So stick around for that. It will be coming up very soon. So click OK. All right, we have done everything as far as adding a revision. In fact, all we've done is change the date because it was already there. So we've looked at revisions, and where we can find revision clouds is in the annotation tab. It's going to be an annotation. So we have revision cloud here. And, this is also a hot debate, and I'm not going to say that this is really a huge deal. It's just kind of something I find that I like to do particularly. And so I can click revision cloud, and then I can just add my revision cloud, click the check mark, and there we go. And you'll notice that the cloud it's actually on the sheet. It's not in the view. And you'll also notice here that I have now populated my revision schedule that's on the sheet, telling me that, hey, there's a revision, so look for a cloud. There it is. Now, like before, maybe I'd delete this, and then I come into my view, and then I choose revision cloud, and then there it is. Okay. Well, if we exit the view, we could see the same thing happen. And, that's cool. So really, what I'm showing you is that it doesn't matter where you put the cloud, whether it's in the view or on the sheet. Now, the reason I like to put it on the sheet is because I don't want the clouds to move with the view if for some reason the view moves. Typically, if you have issued sheets, your views wouldn't be moving from one sheet or something else to another, but I don't want those clouds within the view in case something happens like that. I just don't I don't want that. Maybe I end up duplicating the view or anything like that. Because it's an annotation, if I duplicate with detailing, I'm going to take it with it. So I don't want to do that. I want all of my revisions to be on the sheet, because I'm tracking what's on a sheet versus what's on a view, if that makes sense. And the idea of this revision schedule is that I'm tracking what's on the sheet. And it just so happens that there are views on the sheet that I'm, clouding. So let's actually cloud something. Not that we're really caring about what we end up clouding here, but let's say we decide, well, this corner of the building is going to change. And I or it has changed, which is basically what the revision cloud is saying. I'm highlighting a change. Okay, well, I hit the green check mark, and then I want to tag. So if I come over to the annotation and then tag by category or press TG, the shortcut, then of course I can tag anything. And in this case, because I'm hovering over my cloud, I can see there's my tag populated. So I can click here, and it's the type of thing you've seen before. You've got the same options: vertical, horizontal. It's got a leader, or it's got a free end or attach end. Those are all settings you can look at it for a tag, and it's like any other tag. A lot of people like to turn the leader off and just put it right here, cool, and whatever. I particularly like the leader because it's pointing to the revision itself. It helps me out. I like that. It's just a preference of mine. That's very nice. And so, okay, what have we done here? We've added this revision cloud to the sheet, and we can see there's my revision 1 and the date associated to it and the number. Cool. That's all great. And so let's go ahead and add another one. Of course, how do I do that? Well, I'd go to view, and then I go to revisions, and then just add another one. Okay, and then maybe this date is going to be, tomorrow. Well, in fact, this year's not a leap year, so there's my date. And then I've got my revision 1 and 2, of course, my revision number 1 and 2 there as well. And I'll click OK. And we're going to start to see, what happens whenever I start to add all these at once. So again, annotate, revision cloud, and maybe now this corner is going to change. It has already been updated. There we go. Click OK. Press TG for tag, and there we go. So then we see a 1 as well. And if I come over here, you can see, well, that didn't actually happen. That didn't update. I just added another revision. So what happened? Well, by default, when I come into my revisions, and I'll come back here just so I can explain this, because I have 2 revisions, and I have 2 of them that are unissued, then what is Revit going to do by default? Well, whenever I add a cloud to a sheet, it's going to, by default, give me the most recent revision that is not issued. So in this case, it happens to still be revision 1. If I were to issue revision 1, then of course I would start to add revision 2 because it's the most recent that's unissued. So, but I want to come in here before I issue that. I want to come over to this second one because we want this to not necessarily be associated to the first revision. But if I click on the revision cloud, I can see over here in the instance properties, the properties for this particular cloud, I can see the revision is considered to be revision 1. And if I use the drop down, I can see there's my other option. There's my second revision. So I can click that. And as soon as I do that, I get now my second revision. And then, like also the second revision, my cloud is now number 2. Cool. That makes perfect sense. And so things get a bit weird because I've had a number of projects now where I've had multiple revisions going on at the same time because one change for a project is associated to this RFI, and another change here is associated to this RFI or something like that. A different issue, a different time in which you're going to submit drawings or updates to drawings. And so at that point, it's like, well, what the heck do we do? Well, we can do this at least. The problem is, if I decide I want to print this out, I'm literally going to see both of these at the same time. And so what I would need to come do in here is now determine which one of these is going to be issued first. Now, if this is the most unfortunate part, and this has happened to me, where I really need issue 2 to go out first. And so how would I get that to go out first and not see 1? Well, maybe you could use none. That's an option. Maybe you just rename and you change number 2 to number 1 revision. Well, if you've made a bunch of revision clouds, you don't want to do that because they're already associated. That's probably what I would do. And then I would now issue this. If I hit apply, I could see that my revision cloud for 1 goes away. But here's the problem with all of that. Because it's still there and it's just not showing, that doesn't mean that the revision actually goes away on my revision schedule. I've explained that before. That's what none is doing. It's just removing it from the view, which that is too bad. So the only downside I really see here with revisions is that if you have multiple revisions going at the same time, then it's going to be difficult to issue one before the other while having them both show up on the same sheet. Now, here's something else we can do, which is kind of interesting as well. We can click OK, And let's say I have this revision cloud here, and again, I want to have revision 2 go out first. Well, I can actually attempt to hide this and literally hide this in the view, and that is what we get. And you might say, well, this is perfect. That's what I need. Okay. So what do we actually have here? Well, it's hidden. And by hidden, I mean it's not shown. But there's a difference between, of course, not shown as far as the revision cloud and tag go, and then hidden in my view or on my sheet. So if it's hidden on my sheet or not showing up, then it won't show up in my revisions. Now it's still there if I reveal hidden, which of course is helpful. But at the same time, what's not helpful is if, let's say, I issue this, and then all of a sudden I decide, well, of course, I need to have this first revision come back. Well, then now revision 1 is before revision 2, and that makes perfect sense, but revision 2 went out first. So it's a mess. You could see how this can be, of course, a mess really quickly. So the idea is if you can have one revision going at the same time, issue it, boom, move on to the next one. That's the ideal thing to do. And I know I've talked a lot about 2 revisions at the same time, only because it's happened to me before. So it hasn't happened that much, but it has happened. So there are ways to work around it, whether you're showing none of them and then hiding them. It can be dealt with, but it's not fun. It's not easy. So with all that said, let's continue to look at the different things that we could do with revisions. So I have these clouds here, 1 and 2, and on the sheet here, we could see my revisions 1 and 2. So let's go ahead and issue 1. Let's say we're done with issue 1 and we have 2 here and we're working through our second revisions. So we would issue 1. Okay, great. And so let's do that. And so when I do that, well, nothing's going to happen at this point because we haven't changed the way these tags or the clouds look. The only thing is that I can't change this particular revision. But the only thing that is really different is that if I come to this first revision, of course, everything's grayed out, but I cannot physically delete it. Like, look at this. The delete button is grayed out. I can't delete it. Now, I can hide it, like I said before, and it will remove it from the revision schedule here on the sheet, which is kind of weird, annoying, and backwards. I don't know. But the point is you can't physically delete it. And that is a good thing because it's technically been issued. I have given the contractor this updated change, this sheet with this updated change. And so I want this to persist. I want this to continue. I want it to always be there. And so what can we do to make sure of that? Well, I can just show the tag. Again, maybe this corner changes again. I want to always see that there was a revision that occurred here. And so if I don't show the cloud, I can always hover over the cloud and see, but maybe I come back to issue 2, or maybe let's even go to an issue 3, revision 3, and maybe this is going out the 3rd day, as in the 2nd day of March. And maybe we've issued these first 2. Okay, and now we're working on revision 3. And what revision 3 is another update to this exact corner. Okay, well, how would we begin to show that? Well, I would show that with revision cloud. I just add another cloud there, and that's it. And then I can make another tag. And so this tag will be number 3 because it's revision 3. And there's my date as well. But you'll also notice that the cloud for revision 1 is still there. If I click on it, there it is. Sequence 1, revision 1, right there. And it's got the tag. But the point is, you could see if I'm seeing both of these clouds and then I have a 1 and a 3, like it's going to be a mess. It's going to be hard to tell what's going on. And for the complexity of some of the projects you're going to work on, this might happen a lot. Believe me, it's happened to me a lot where things were just constantly changed. You got to change this again or something close to it or whatever. And it's really nice to be able to not see every cloud. The idea is you see the most recent clouds, you issue the sheets, and then it becomes issued. So at this point, maybe I don't have any more clouds. I can just come in here or maybe I don't have any more issues that I need to worry about right now. And I've issued everything. Well, I just simply issue that. And then I just show my tags. And then that's it. Easy, very simple. Look at that. And so this is where kind of you get to the point where you're kind of ready to do the next revision. And so again, at this point, of course, you can add one more and that's easily done. You add one more, great. Not too difficult. And that's it. We cloud and tag. And then finally, one more thing I want to look at is the arc length. And this is something I've never needed to change. It's a little personal thing if you want to update it. But I'm going to draw a cloud out here. And I'm not going to bother tagging it yet, but I'm going to go to the view and revisions once again, and we can see the arc length. And so this arc length is associated to all of these weird looking arcs in the actual cloud itself. And so I don't know where this number is reflected. Maybe it's within the largest of the arcs or arcs or the small. I don't know. But if we make this, let's maybe make this a 1/4 inch instead of 3/4 of an inch, and we hit apply, we can see what happens. This gets significantly smaller. So again, this is all up to you. It's all aesthetics. I've never needed to change this because this is a good size and it looks accurate. It looks like it fits sheets well, unless you're dealing with really tiny sheets or something like that. I don't know. That's when you might need to change it. But, so we've looked at the basics of revisions. We've not only exhaustively looked at all of the different options that we have here, but what we did, how we can see and use the revisions, what they're for. Again, we have not looked at the numbering because I'll save this for another video. This is very important and it has some significant impacts on how your project will operate. So I'll save that for another video. So just remember that the default is by project and what we've seen there. So let's now go to another sheet and work from there. So we have only looked at that site plan and we've only worked off the site plan, but maybe this revision 4 now starts to look at some of these floor plan updates. So I'm now on the floor plan and I want to see here some revisions. Something has changed. Okay. Again, go to annotate, revision cloud, and let's just add a cloud over this area here. Maybe this has been updated. Okay. And then again, we tag it again and we can see there's my 4. This is my 4th revision. That works great. It looks perfect. Makes sense. And then when I come over here, I can see there's my 4 and then my date, and that's great. And it will start to populate as I go. It doesn't matter what sheet I'm on because I can now see, okay, there's nothing here because I haven't updated anything. And then add a revision cloud. Maybe these syncs were updated. So boom, cloud that and then tag it. Also note that you don't have to add a tag to a cloud for it to populate on the schedule. So if I delete my tag, it's still there. The point is the cloud is what's telling the revision to show up on the schedule. So finally we'll tag this and there we go. Okay, so really, that's kind of it. As far as the basics, the overview of revisions, we've really looked at everything. And I hope you didn't find this too difficult. If you did or have any questions, please leave those in the comments below. I'll be sure to answer them all. But, we've looked at it all. I sure hope you understand everything. Again, if not, leave those in the comments. But that will do it for this video. I hope to see you in the next part because we are going to cover the numbering. That's going to be a very important thing to be able to understand, and as far as like how it works, but understanding the impacts that it will have on your project as a whole and your project team, and communicating with the contractor, it is different. And so be sure to stick around for that video as well. So if you did happen to learn something, maybe you liked the video, then please demolish that like button. It really helps me out a lot. I cannot thank you all who do that. It really does help me out a lot. So that will do it for this video. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.